Laramie Tunsil, the highest paid lineman in the NFL, is headed to surgery. Dan Quinn confirmed it himself this morning, and what he said about the timeline is going to have you worried. Meanwhile, Stefon Diggs is already in Ashburn working with Jaden Daniels, and what he said about him has the whole DMV buzzing. And to close it out, Washington just cut a receiver who ran a 4.41, and in seconds, I'll tell you why that's a massive signal. Raise hail. Okay fam, let's treat this with the seriousness it deserves because we are not talking about just another player. We're talking about the man Adam Peters turned just 5 months ago into the highest paid offensive lineman in league history. $30 million a year, the first one to cross that number. And that same man, the one protecting Jaden Daniels' blindside, ended up in the medical tent Saturday after a one-on-one rep against Odafe Owe. Let me paint the scene for you because how it happened matters. Owe came upfield, cut back inside, and drove hard into the upper part of Tunsil's body. Tunsil doubled over in pain, grabbed his right side, and walked, more like limped his pride, off to the medical tent. From there, straight inside for a full evaluation, and the diagnosis came back hours later: torn triceps. This Monday, Dan Quinn personally confirmed that Tunsil needs surgery, and while he wouldn't put an exact return date on it, he did say something that worries me more than it should: that they're hoping he's back at some point this season. Listen to that phrasing. He didn't say weeks. He didn't say by the season opener. He said, at some point. For anybody who understands triceps injuries, that's coach speak for covering your bases because the medical reality is ugly. This kind of repair typically takes 4 to 7 months of recovery. Do the math yourselves. If surgery happens this week, best case scenario we're talking about December. Worst case, he doesn't play a single snap in 2026. And honestly, bro, prepare for the worst, because getting your hopes up too high on an injury like this only hurts twice as bad come October. Now, why does this matter so much? Because Tunsil wasn't just a good left tackle. Statistically, he was one of the best on the planet at that position. He allowed just 10 combined sacks over his last 3 seasons. 10 in 3 years. That's an absolute strength of this roster. A wall protecting the blind side of a quarterback who's already carrying a scary injury history. In 2025, Jaden Daniels played only 7 full games because of 3 separate injuries: a knee sprain, a hamstring strain, and a dislocated elbow that flared back up in December and ended his season. Washington went from a couple of plays away from the Super Bowl in 2024 to a 5-12 collapse in 2025, in large part because of that wave of injuries. And right when this franchise was starting to feel solid ground again, with Diggs arriving Friday and camp energy at its highest point, Saturday delivered this gut punch. Look, I could be wrong, but to me this smells like a pattern, like history repeating itself, and if Washington doesn't find a real solution up front, we're gonna be having this exact same conversation about Jaden Daniels come October. Again, let's get tactical, because this is exactly what separates this channel from the ones that just report without analyzing. Option 1, the one already in motion according to team sources, is Brandon Coleman. And look, this isn't some improvised fill-in. Coleman started 12 games there in 2024 as a rookie and closed out last season right there when Tunsil went down for the final 3 weeks. Across those 18 starts for Coleman at left tackle, Washington won 11. Throw that stat in the face of anybody saying this is the end of the world, but let's be honest about the ugly numbers too. Coleman lost that starting job for a reason, and that reason was the outside pass rush. Too many times as a rookie, he got beat on outside moves, not because his feet failed him, but because his hands got to the contact point late. That's a technique problem, fixable with work, but don't tell me Coleman is Tunsil, because he's not, and pretending otherwise only sets us up for disappointment. Option 2, and this is the one that interests me most tactically, is moving Josh Conerly Jr. back to the left side. Here's the context. Conerly played left tackle at Oregon on a team that earned the top seed in the college football playoff. That's his natural side. Washington shifted him to the right as a rookie last year because Tunsil arrived, and Conerly had a tough learning year, finishing with a Pro Football Focus grade of 59.9, ranked 67 out of 89 qualifying tackles. Not a pretty number, but exactly what you'd expect from a rookie tackle facing the best pass rushers in the conference. If Dan Quinn decides to send Conerly back to his natural spot and slides Andrew Wiley over to the right side, that's, according to Albert Breer himself, a relatively easy solution. I'd add something to that. It's not just easy, it could be better in the medium term, because it gives Conerly back the technical comfort of his college days right when he needs it most. And what about Andrew Wiley? He was the first man in when Tunsil limped off Saturday. And that's exactly the problem. Wiley's been in the league 9 years, but almost his entire career has been on the right side. 5 snaps at left tackle since 2017. 5 in 9 years of playing football. Yes, he's a veteran. Yes, he knows how to play NFL football, but asking him to protect a franchise quarterback's blind side against the best edge rushers in the NFC East, and don't even get me started on Micah Parsons or Myles Garrett, is asking too much of somebody without real reps out there. And then there's the question Heavy.com confirmed today with a direct source. Is Washington going to sign Taylor Decker? Jeremy Fowler of ESPN put it plainly. Decker has a direct connection with new offensive coordinator David Blau from their days together in Detroit, but the front office has no interest in bringing him in. And this is where I, as a fan, have to be honest with you about my frustration. Decker is a recent former Pro Bowler from 2024, still available on the market, with direct knowledge of the system Blau is about to install. In any logical universe, that combination screams emergency signing. But Adam Peters is betting, from everything we've seen, that the internal depth is enough. I could be wrong, but here's my read. If Coleman has a solid camp over the next 2 weeks, Washington sticks with the internal solution and saves that cap money for another priority. If Coleman looks overmatched, then yes, before the roster cutdown deadline, they're going to have to make a call. And that call could very well be to Decker, or to some other last-minute veteran on the free agent market. Personally, I'm dating this prediction. By September 1st, before the regular season kicks off, Washington signs outside offensive line reinforcement if Coleman doesn't show clear progress over the next 2 preseason scrimmages. If I'm wrong, I'll say so on this channel, no excuses. There's an irony in all this that I can't let slide, fam. The same Odafe Owe who hurt Tunsil is Washington's own free agency addition, the piece Adam Peters brought in specifically to pressure opposing quarterbacks. So the team's own new weapon ended up knocking out, probably for the season, the piece protecting their own quarterback. That's the constant risk of training camp. Players from your own roster competing at max intensity against each other, and sometimes that intensity comes at a cost. Nobody's fault, that's football in its rawest form, but it stings all the same. And there's one more layer I want you to understand, because it directly affects the blocking scheme. David Blau, the new offensive coordinator, has been designing a system built around quick passes and 7-man protections to maximize Jaden Daniels' movement outside the pocket. That scheme relies heavily on the left tackle winning his individual matchup without constant help from a guard or tight end, freeing those resources up for other protections. With Tunsil, that was almost automatic. With Coleman or with Connerly relearning the left side, Blau is probably going to have to scale back some of his more aggressive offensive design and send extra help to that side early in the season, which in turn pulls a receiver or a back out of the passing routes. It's a domino effect that starts on the line and ends up limiting Jaden Daniels' options through the air. Here's what they can't do: stand still. This roster has a real contention window open right now, with Diggs freshly arrived and Daniels entering year 3. Every week that passes without a real solution is another week of extra risk for the franchise quarterback's health, and that's the cruelest irony of all. Washington spent months building a contention caliber offensive roster, and in a single practice rep, that whole build got shaken to its okay, we needed that breather, bro, because after talking suddenly has me hyped about this offense. Stephon Diggs is a commander. He signed a 1-year deal Friday worth up to $12 million, according to ESPN, and by Sunday he was already out on the Ashburn practice field working with Jaden Daniels like he'd been there all season. Let's put into context why this signing matters so much. Diggs comes off leading the AFC's Patriots in receiving yards last season, with 1,013 yards and 4 touchdowns on 85 catches. But the number that actually blew my mind is this. His catch rate was 83.3%, the second highest ever recorded by a wide receiver across 45 seasons, according to CBS Sports Research. Only Michael Thomas of the Saints, back in 2018, posted a higher rate in that entire historical database. That number reflects a receiver who understands separation, understands leverage, and knows how to work within the scheme to give his quarterback easy throwing windows. Exactly the kind of player a third-year quarterback, still developing his field reads, needs on his side. And here's the part that gives me chills, fam. Diggs is from Maryland. He's local. Played his college ball right there at Maryland Terrapins, and this signing feels like a homecoming more than any front office transaction. When he spoke to reporters Friday, he didn't hide any of that emotion. It's home, my family's here, my support system is here. I love everything about home and the organization, Diggs said, and then added something that should give every Washington fan chills. The good kind. He called Jaden Daniels a superstar. A 12-year veteran receiver, 4-time Pro Bowler, with over 100 catches in 4 different seasons of his career, a streak tied for the second longest in NFL history, calling our 25-year-old quarterback a superstar. That's coming from a veteran who's already seen enough football to recognize real talent when it's standing right in front of him, and that carries more weight than any locker room courtesy. On the other side, Jaden Daniels talked to NFL Network about his early impressions of Diggs, and what he said was just as telling. They asked him if he can already read Diggs' body language on routes, something that usually takes months of reps to build between quarterback and receiver. Daniels' answer was direct, 100%, he said, praising how definitive Diggs is on his routes. In tactical terms, that means Diggs doesn't tip his hand with his body. His breaks are crisp, and that makes it nearly impossible for a cornerback to play the route instead of the man. For a quarterback still building his internal pocket clock, having a receiver who arrives definitive at every break removes an entire variable of uncertainty from the read. Now, let's be fair with the analysis and not just pure hype. Diggs is 32 years old. He's entering his 12th season. The Patriots released him before free agency kicked off precisely because his cap hit was set to jump from $10.5 to $26.5 million in each of the next 2 years, a number that no longer made sense for a receiver at that stage of his career. Washington got a real discount, $12 million max on a 1-year deal, precisely because the market was already seeing signs of decline in Diggs' value. The question I keep asking myself, and you should too, is this. Are we watching the 2025 Diggs who led New England in yards, or are we 1 year away from the natural age-related decline that catches up with every receiver? My personal opinion, dated and all, by week 10 of this season, Diggs will have at least 5 games of 70-plus receiving yards as the number 2 option behind Terry McLaurin. If I'm wrong, I'll say it on this channel, nothing hidden. What's undeniable is the multiplier effect this has on the rest of the receiver room. Diggs said it himself, with a confidence I loved. It's good being around other players that can ball. It's going to be hard to double somebody in this offense. Think about this tactically. With McLaurin stretching the defense outside, Diggs working the middle of the field with his surgical separation, and a backfield room with Jackery, Kroski, Merritt, and Rashad White, David Blouse now has enough verified weapons to dictate the matchup instead of just reacting to it. That fam is the difference between an offense that survives and one that dictates the pace of the game. To close things out, something smaller, but with its own story, and it says a lot about how stacked Washington's receiver room is right now. Saturday, the same day as all the Tunsil chaos, the Commanders released Chris Hilton Jr., a rookie receiver out of LSU signed as an undrafted free agent. Sunday, within hours, Green Bay claimed him off waivers. And look, I get it, it sounds like a minor note, but as an analytical fan, I can't let it pass without context. Hilton ran an official 4.41 in the 40-yard dash at the Combine. That's elite level speed, the kind of number that usually locks you into a spot on some NFL roster, even if it's just the practice squad. In his college career at LSU, he finished with 41 catches for 780 yards, a 19-yard per catch average that confirms this wasn't just combined speed, it was speed that translated into real explosive plays. So why did Washington let him go? Simple. The Commanders' receiver room is deeper right now than it's been in years. With Terry McLaurin as the unquestioned number 1, Diggs freshly arrived as the luxury number 2, and guys like Treylon Burks, Diami Brown, and Luke McCaffrey flashing real potential in the weeks of practice before Diggs even got there. There just wasn't roster space for a long-term developmental piece like Hilton. Green Bay, meanwhile, is dealing with injuries in their own receiver room, with Jaden Reed nursing an ankle and Matthew Golden dealing with a toe issue, so for them, picking up free speed off waivers is a zero-risk decision. My personal read on this is a confirmation of strength. Adam Peters built so much legitimate depth at that position that a receiver with first-round combine speed couldn't even lock down a spot on the 74-man roster. That, fam, is a luxury problem, and I wish we had more problems like that around here. And there you have it, family. A day of pure extremes. The worst possible news with Tunsil heading straight into surgery, contrasted against the best possible energy with Diggs already integrated and talking about Jaden Daniels like he's this league's future MVP. That's exactly the roller coaster of being a Commanders fan, and honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. This franchise has history, it has grit, and right now it has a real contention window open with Daniels under center. The Tunsil situation hurts, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't, but real teams define themselves by how they respond when Plan A breaks down in the middle of training camp. Adam Peters has already shown us in free agency that he doesn't sit still, and I trust that if Coleman doesn't answer the call, he's going to make a move before the regular season starts. Tell me down in the comments, do you trust Brandon Coleman as your starting left tackle, or should Washington already be dialing up Taylor Decker? I want to read every single answer. Drop a like if this analysis helped you out, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video with more of this training camp madness. Burgundy and gold till the wheels fall off. Raise hail.